Hey guys, just back with another Python video tutorial. We'll be going over 2D lists again, so this is part 2. Just basically moving on to initializing lists using nested loops. So it's a little bit tricky, but we'll go over it. It's not that hard once you get it. So we'll create a two-dimensional list and assign some random numbers to each of the elements, or the indexes. So again, I'm in pycharm. We'll just get started with the example. So we'll just delete all this stuff. So first, let's start by importing something. So we'll import the random module. Here we'll have some constants. We'll say rows points to 3 and calls points to 4. We'll say we'll have a main function now. So we'll create a 2D list. And we'll initialize everything to 0, and we will kind of set it up in the 2D form instead of all the way across on one line. So we'll have vals list points to 0, 0, 0. We'll move that second bracket down. Okay, so maybe we can actually make it look a little bit better here. So we'll have, no, let me do that. Okay, so we'll have, let's just say I just want to see how pycharm actually has auto formatting. I just want to see how they'll auto format this 2D list. Well, it doesn't let me, so it doesn't automatically put a square bracket. I guess that's probably a good thing. But then here we'll have a 0, 0. Okay, so it actually works out not too bad. Better than a text, like a normal notepad. Actually, we're supposed to have 4 of them, so we'll have 4 of them here. This looks a little bit better, easier to initialize it. So then we'll have 0, 0, 0, 0, so I guess 4, 8, 12 indexes. And yeah, that looks actually not too bad. So we have our 2D list. Why is it giving me? Okay, there should be a comma. Nope, there should be a comma at the end of this, so just some syntax stuff here. Comma at the end of this row as well. Okay, there we go. So we have all the warnings disappeared now. So now we'll I'll show you guys how to initialize this list, 2D list. So there's a special way. You're going to need 2 incrementing variables and 2 for loops. So the way to do it is, for example, we'll have for I in range. Pass in rows here. You can just use a number, you can use a constant, whatever. Then we'll have for j in range calls, and we'll say vals list of list index I, and then j, like that, of index I, j, of index I, index j. Then we'll point it to random.rand int from values 1 to 100. And then after we'll print it. So we'll print vals list I think there's a special way to print it. I don't believe this will print them out nicely in a 2D form, so I'll have to see if I can remember how to do that. After all that, we'll call main. I'll just move that up here. So we'll save that. We'll run it. So there we go. We have our 2D list printed out with random values. Hopefully you guys can see that. Random values from 1 to 100 in kind of different basically just random values of between 1 and 100 printed out in a 2D list like this, except we have it printed out in one line, which isn't the proper way to print out a 2D list, and Python does not print it out automatically. Pretty much no language seems to print it out in the 2D form. So if I can remember how to do this, which I might actually have to look at on some old notes, but the way to do it is you have to loop through. Once you have to loop through again, so you have to say for I in pretty much range works. Can we just call the vals list? For j in vals list. Print vals list of. Sorry, I'm just trying to think of this on the fly here. I forgot. I've done this in different languages. There's always a way to do it, but it's kind of a tricky thing to do. Okay, so we're gonna want to space them out, perhaps. So maybe we can throw a tab in here. And then what else do we do? I think we print an empty line. I think. I'm not sure if this is exactly the way. It's something like this. It's very similar to what this is. Maybe missing something, but we'll try this out and see if it works. So let's just run that. Nope, what's happening here? Line 17. Okay, so it's telling us the error started there, or the exception, and then it moved from 17, the traceback. So in Python they call it the traceback, in other languages they call it the call stack trace. Basically just a traceback in Python. So it started at line 17 in module main, then it moved to line 14, saying line 14 caused the problem. That's what all this red writing is. We've kind of we went over it in the exception part of this series. So it's saying line 14 there's a problem. In line 14, in main, type error list indices must be integers or slices, not list. Excuse me. So what is the problem here? Vals list. Vals list. Why doesn't it not like this? Okay, let's try K and L. Maybe it's not liking the... I don't think that's it, but I'm just gonna try and see if that's the problem. Spell something wrong here. Vowels list. Vowels list. No. No. Okay, that wasn't the problem. So let's undo those. Let's leave it as I and J. So let's just change this. Actually, we'll go for I in range. Rows, we'll say for J in range. Calls. Let's see if that works. Okay, it worked, but the thing is, there's something wrong here. Let's try this. No. I think the problem is that in Python it prints a new line in Python from the print with the print function prints. The print function in Python prints everything on a new line when you call the print function. So what we can do is, can we say comma here? Maybe. Nope. Is this the problem? No, that shouldn't be the problem. It should print the first four and then stop and then go new line, and then that's what it should be doing. It should be printing 4 on each line. I'm just gonna quickly look and see if I still have this. You know what? I may have deleted it. Okay, I'm just trying to think. It might be a Python thing. I don't think this end thing is working. Perhaps we move the new line here. Nope. Let's take this thing out. Okay, so that did work. That did work. Okay, and that worked. So for I in rows, for J in calls, it's going to start at index 0. Okay, so it's going to start at in index I. It's going to print the first row, so it's going to iterate through calls. Oh, I think I know what to do. Okay, I think I got it. I think I got it. Print new line outside of that indentation. I think that was it. Is that the way? There we go. That's the way to do it. Okay, so apologize for that for the time. So it's a trick. It's a very tricky thing to do actually, but it's always the same in every language. So somehow I remembered it. It's somehow I remembered it, but it's a hard thing to remember, to be honest. As you can see, I had to play around with it a lot. It's not impossible though, so it is tricky though. I know if you're learning code, this looks pretty serious, to be honest, because it's a lot of different looping. Actually, I may have to run this through the debugger to show you guys what's happening. Actually, I probably will. Alright, so basically what's happening here is it's saying, well, I'll run through it in the debugger as well. So once we have our list set up and we initialize all the values, we'll go through that in a sec. But what's actually happening here is we have so we're saying for I in range. Obviously we've gone over this a bunch of times, so it's the range is rows here, so it's going from index 0 to 2. Which means that there would be 3 rows, index 0, 1, and 2. Then for j in range calls, which is actually 4, so there's going to be 4 columns, index 0 to 3. So remember, in our nested for loops video, if you guys watch that, every time I increments, before it increments by 1, so it's going to stay as index 0, j is going to increment several times. It's going to finish its whole iteration cycle. So once this becomes false, then I will increment by 1 and j will increment its whole cycle again until this is false. And each time, so let's just walk through it in the debugger so you guys understand. So I've set a breakpoint at main. I'm going to click the debug icon in after I save it. Alright, so we have it says that we have calls and rows, both constants, int 4 and 3. So we'll step into main because it's stuck on this execution, stuck on this line. It's waiting for something to happen here. So we'll step in. So now it's going to, if I step in, okay, so it's going to initialize that list. So 2D list, as you can see, gets initialized right there, and that's how it printed it out. So we have index 0, 1, and 2. And as you can see, each index has its own list. All ints in this case, since we don't have any commas here to signify that it's a string literal. So in this case, we just have everything as an int. The Python compiler just took everything as an int because it's saying, okay, well, you don't have any string literals here. It's not a float, so I guess it's an int. There's no custom types, which we'll do later when you work on classes and objects. But basically, yeah, so that's pretty much it. We're now here for I in range rows, for j in range columns, so we'll step in. So I is going to point to 0. It's an int. And I'll step into the next loop, since j is going to point to 0, it's also an int. So val's list of list index I, j, so in this case 0, 0 is going to point to, so 0, 0 is going to be there. It's going to be row 0, column 0. So j is going to be the columns, I is going to be the rows. So at val's list of list index 0, 0, or list index, yeah, so 0, 0, it's going to put a random value between 1 and 100 in val's list of list index 0, 0. So I'll step over that, and as you can see, we have a random value there. I think this is either 10 or 19. It's a little bit far, I can't see that from here. So we have, because I'm sitting a bit far away, so we have for j in range calls now. So now j is going to increment from 0 to 1, so it's going to move from that first. So if you guys can see, I'm not sure if if you guys can see that. But we have I can't make it any bigger, so I apologize. You'll have to zoom in on your own device if you can't see, because pycharm doesn't let me zoom that in, and Windows doesn't have very good zooming in of. I can't really zoom in too well here. So basically, j is going to increment from 0 to 1, which j is our columns, therefore that will move from row 0, column 0 to row 0, column 1. So it's going to slide across there to the next index in that first row 0. When I step in, j is going to increment to 1, as you can see in the variables here. Now once again, val's list of list index I, list index j. In this case, so val's list of list index 0, 1, because we're going to replace I with 0 and j with 1. Kind of like math, pretty much like math, like algebra or something. So we're going to point that to random.arrandInt, so it's going to place another random value in val's list of 0, 1. So I'll step over. And that process is going to continue until the loop is finished. So now 0, 2 will be placed with a random value. Now 0, 3 will be placed with a random value. So now, as you can see, that whole first row has values in it. It was filled with random values. So now this line is going to become false when I step over it, because the range is now complete for range 0 to basically 4 minus 1, which will be 3. So if I increment one more time, the condition will become false. Therefore, it'll move back to this loop up here. Execution will move from here to here because this one is false, but we're still in the nested loop, so we'll move back up here once I step in here. So now I is going to increment from 0 to 1 because it's still in range of 3. So I'll step in, you're going to see I change from 0 to 1 in our variables here. Not too hard, right? So now it's a little bit tricky, but once you practice it in the debugger like I am here, walk through it. Even if the code works perfectly, you just set a breakpoint and walk through it. Easiest thing to do, best way to learn, best way to impress your professor. So basically, to show that you know the code. So basically now we're going to walk in to this loop once again, because this loop is going to now start again. So j is going to start from index 0 because we're starting this loop again. We're going to start it from, so j is going to start at this time at 0 because we've started a new iteration of the outer loop, which means we'll have to start a new iteration of the inner loop. So j is going to start at index 0 once I step in. Right now it's set to 3 because last time we were at 3, but once we step in, you'll see that change to 0. So as you can see now in the variables that j changed to 0, I is still 1. Or it's not 1. It was 0 before, now it's 1. So j is 0. So now in this case, we're going to move on to our next row in the 2D list, because val's list is now at index 1 for I instead of 0. So val's list of list index 1, list index 0 now, because j is 0, so it's val's list of 1, 0 is going to point to another random value here between 1 and 100. So once I step over that, as you'll be able to see that the list in row 1, column 0, that value is going to change from 0 to a random value once I step over. So as you can see, that changes some value, I think 94 for for our val's list of list index 1, 0. Now once that happens, of course, we're back up to the loop here. It's going to check the loop condition, check if we're still in range in Python. So then now it's going to say for j, so basically for j in range, which it's still in range, so it's going to be true, which means we'll move down to the next line. J is going to increment from 0 to 1. So now val's list of 1, 1, because I is 1 and now j is 1, so val's list of list index 1, 1 is going to point to another random value. So in this case, as you can see in the variables in our list here in row 1, column now 1, we're going to get another random value, so that 0 is going to change to a random value. And that same process is going to continue to fill the rest of the list. So now index 2, so now basically row 1, index 2 is going to change. Now row 1, index 0, 1, 2, I believe 3 in this case now, will be changed to another random value. And now that whole row is complete. So we're just going to have one more. So the execution is going to loop back up to the top loop in this case. So now I is now, sorry, just going to check that condition there again. Okay, so now I is going to be 2 now once we step over. So as you can see, we're in our last row now. So we'll just fill the values. You guys get the idea at this point, I hope. Alright, so once that happens, same idea here, same thing. Instead of we're going to enter a new nested loop, but in this case, we're going to step in. So I is going to be 0 here. We're going to step in. J is going to be 0. So it's going to print vals list of 0, 0, then print a tab, and then so let me just make this bigger here. Alright, so it's going to print out vals list of list index 0, 0. So as you can see, it printed 10. J is going to increment from 0 to 1. Now it's going to print vals list of 0, 1 instead of 0, 0. So now as you can see, what's going to happen here. Now we got 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2. Is there one more? I think there's one more. So 0, 1, so our list of index 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. So we got that first whole row was printed. Now so the condition for J now, for J in range calls, that's going to be false. So now we're going to move back up to the outer loop. Okay, so before we do that, apologize for that. So after J gets, if I confuse anyone there, so after, I just forgot to mention the new line. So after J increments from 0, for J in range calls, so once that whole thing iterates completely through, and now this condition is false because we have our first row printed. After that, we're going to exit that loop. We're going to still be in the outer loop, but before we get back to that condition check, we have to print a new line. So here, at the end, it's going to print a new line after that 3. Then it's going to now move up back to the top outer loop, going to check the condition. We're still in range, but I is going to increment from 0 to 1. We'll step in. And then it's going to repeat the process for J starting at 0 again. So it's going to print out 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3. And now J is going to become, that line is going to become false for the condition to check J, the J loop. And it's going to print a new line. I is going to increment from 1 to 2. J is going to start at 0 again. It's going to print out vals list of 2, 0. Is that 2, 0? Yeah, I think that's 2, 0 now. Hopefully you guys can see that. Maybe I'll just move that up just in case the camera, hopefully the camera catches it. But alright, so yeah, we're going to print out vals list of list index 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3. J is going to become false, going to print a new line. I is going to become false. That for loop is going to become false with I in range rows. So once that happens, everything's complete finally. As you can see, we have the output of our 2D list. And that's everything. That's pretty much the hardest part of 2D lists. So if you got that down, good job you guys. You got everything pretty much with 2D lists, how to print it out in the special form to impress your professors. And all that good stuff. So thanks for watching, guys. If you liked the video, you can give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you like for more programming videos and investing tutorials. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.